So welcome. I'm Judy Farvolden. I'm the Managing Director of Mobility Network at the School of Cities, and I'm the moderator of today's session. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to this. This is the sixth and last session of the Way Forward in 2023. Before we start, I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. This event is being recorded and it will be shared. So Mobility Network at the School of Cities, if you don't know us, it's an institutional strategic initiative at the University of Toronto. In 2012, the UN Sustainable Development Goals recognized that transport is not an end in itself, but rather a means allowing people to access what they need: jobs, markets and goods, social interaction, education, and a full range of other services contributing to healthy and fulfilled lives. U of T also recognizes the sustainable movement of people and goods as a global challenge that can only be addressed by a cross-disciplinary collaboration among university researchers and further through collaboration with the public and partners in government and industry. Mobility Network, a group of about 70 researchers from across U of T's 3 campuses whose diverse interests span the broad scope of critical issues about mobility, is the University of Toronto's answer to that grand challenge. We've organized that broad expertise into 7 knowledge clusters. Of course, everything is connected to everything, but this organizing principle shows us what our focus areas are on the key challenges facing mobility researchers, like equity and inclusion, land use and economy, climate change and health, emerging new mobility technologies and services. We'll talk about that today. And let's not forget freight and urban goods movement. We wrap this in the green circle to remind ourselves that transportation, mobility, and accessibility is about people, about who they are and the needs and wants they have. And that generates their demand for travel. And that gives us the problem of getting them around. And that is wrapped in an outer circle that reminds us solutions must work within the constraints of our natural environment, our built environment, and our governance environment. So welcome to this, the 6 of 6 planned panels. Yes, this is it for this season. This session is titled Tackling Our Legendary Congestion with ITS in Toronto, of course, ITS in Transit. And of course, I'm talking about Toronto, the Greater Toronto Area and the Greater Golden Horseshoe when we talk about our congestion. The chat's been set up for you to send your questions directly to me, the moderator. So please use the chat to send in your questions. We're going to have the panel discussion, a little bit of the panelists present a little bit of discussion, and then we'll take Q&A from you. Okay. So back in 2013, it was estimated the congestion in the GTHA resulted in $11 million in annual lost productivity, and things have not improved. Toronto is the 3rd most congested city in North America, according to a recent report from INRIX. The average amount of time a Toronto driver spends stuck in traffic in 2022 was up almost 60% from the year before, 118 hours, and more people are coming. What are we going to do? So today, our 3 panelists are going to talk about what intelligent transportation systems can and can't do to improve traffic flow, based on their years of studying and developing the theory and based on years of experience acquired in practice. We'll also talk about how transit must be part of the solution, what it will take to make it truly the better way, and the role technology can play in doing that. The panelists are each going to take a few minutes to bring their perspectives to this discussion. Then I'll moderate a panel discussion, and then we'll take questions. Again, the chat's been configured, so you can message me directly. Please post your questions to me in the chat. I'll introduce each of the panelists in their turn, beginning with Bahir. Bahir Abdulhai is a professor in the Department of Civil and Mineral Engineering at the University of Toronto, and he is an expert in transportation systems and intelligent transportation. He's the founder and director of the Toronto Intelligent Transportation Systems Center. And the founder and co-director of the Center for Automated and Transformative Transportation Systems. Today, Bahir is going to set the stage by explaining how congestion happens. He'll explain how various IT solutions can keep traffic moving, but also talk about the limits of the technology. Bahir, I see you're already sharing, so please go ahead, turn on your camera, your mic, and Over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Judy. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you see the slides and hear me well. I specialize in traffic control with artificial intelligence under the umbrella of intelligent transportation systems. But today I'm not talking about any details of AI applications or whatnot. I just want to focus on a key fundamental question that I feel is not very well addressed in the minds of many at the levels of decision makers and researchers and citizens of the area. So what can really ITS do, and what is the limit, what it cannot do? So we know we live in a big area that keeps growing, as Judy mentioned, and most recently we've been labeled as the 7th worst city in the world in terms of traffic congestion. So why is this happening? No one is proud to hold this trophy. So why is this happening? Well, let's quickly just go through the anatomy of congestion, what causes it, the recurrent congestion that we see every day. Number one cause is simply demand exceeds supply. That is, the number of cars that want to use highways, for instance, cannot fit in the size of the highways. It's like trying to put on a pair of shoes that 2 sizes smaller than your feet. Simply, it will not fit. But that's not the end of it. There is also something technically known as capacity drop, which means that if we have certain capacity for the road, if you push your luck and try to squeeze more traffic into it, it becomes stop and go, and the bottlenecks get activated and capacity itself drops. And when capacity drops, as you see in front of you on the screen, except that my video is not working, I don't know why.
Bear your screen, we're still looking at your title screen.
Oh, do you see my screen now?
Yes.
You're not in presentation mode. Maybe you need to switch into presentation mode.
I was on a presentation mode, but I'll manage with this. That's okay. So as you see in front of you on the screen here, as traffic goes into the bottleneck, it gets activated and you lose capacity. What does that mean exactly? So, for example, if you have 3-lane highway, each lane carries approximately about 2,000 vehicles per hour. That means the bottleneck here has capacity of about 6,000 vehicles per hour. Now, if you try to squeeze into this traffic from the main line, as well as on the ramp, that totals about 7,000 vehicles per hour into capacity that's 6,000 vehicles per hour. As I said, it simply will not fit. So which means that if your inflow is 7,000 trying to come in, but you're draining it at the rate of 6,000 capacity, the difference between the two will be simply congestion. All this red triangle here, that is you sitting on the road. And even after demand subsides after the peak period, it still takes a bit of time to drain that congestion. All right, so that's not the end of it, as I mentioned. The problem now is that this 6,000 vehicles per hour capacity, if we try to push it, then it drops down to 5,000 vehicles per hour instead of the 6,000, which means that now we're not only dealing with demand that exceeds the capacity, but capacity itself drops, doubling congestion on the road. So, of course, that multi-billion-dollar question is, do we need more infrastructure? Do we have to build more highways and transit, which cost billions of dollars and takes decades to put in place? Or do we have to consider measures such as time of day use and congestion charges and whatnot? Or can technology alleviate congestion without necessarily needing to build highways? To what extent is this the case? And can we have some clarity on this? Well, things like the solutions that I'm talking about, things like, for instance, ramp metering on freeways, variable speed limits on freeways, smart traffic lights or adaptive traffic signal control on the streets, or dynamic congestion pricing. You can categorize them under supply control versus demand management. For example, what you're looking at here is the case of ramp control, and instead of the congestion up top, we control the ramp to pace traffic in, and that results in resolving congestion completely on the highway. Yes, you pay a little bit of weight on the ramp, but you benefit at a much greater extent when you join the highway, and everybody benefits quite tremendously. Or we can meter the highway itself with dynamic speed limits, and again, that results in dissolving congestion completely. So all of these measures are supply control measures. Then we can resort to other measures such as demand management. So this triangle of congestion that we talked about before, we want to flatten it to be the red line that you see there, meaning eliminating congestion entirely. So how can we do this? We do this by setting in place time-dependent congestion charges that is triangular, that looks exactly as the triangle of congestion itself. And this has the job of flattening the peak and inducing departure time rescheduling by people. So what is the takeaway from all of this? The takeaway is the following, that with demand, in the example I've given you of 7,000 vehicles per hour trying to fit into 6,000 capacity, when this happens, capacity drops. And then with technology, ITS that is, then we can reverse this capacity loss. So the potential of intelligent transportation systems is eliminating approximately half the congestion on the road. But if demand still exceeds the capacity, then we have to resort to congestion pricing that would flatten the peak and potentially eliminate the rest of the congestion. But now we ask the question, what if demand increases further? Not only 7,000 in the example I've given you, it becomes 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. As the region keeps growing and growing and growing, what do? Then obviously we have to take a good portion of that demand onto public transit, which is much more sustainable. We use telecommuting, which worked like charm during COVID, and also be mindful and do some ride sharing, active transportation. And of course, we can build more highways, but if you build more highways, then there are sustainability flags here, and all the issues we talked about will arise again, and we have to address them with all these technologies. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bahir. Thank you very much. Next up is Amr Shalby. Amr, could you please turn on your mic and your camera? Amr Shalby is a professor in the Department of Civil and Mineral Engineering at the University of Toronto. He's the founding director of the Transit Analytics Lab, and together with Bahir, the co-director of the Center for Automated and Transformative Transportation Systems. Amr specializes in transit planning and scheduling, intelligent transit systems, transit operational management, transit system resilience, and automated and connected transit technologies. Today, Amr is going to talk about the role of transit as a congestion mitigating technology and how intelligence can be applied to improve transit systems. Over to you, Amr.
Thank you, Judy, and hello, everyone. So as Judy mentioned, yeah, I specialize in public transit, and I'm just going to make some initial remarks today about the role of transit in tackling congestion in our urban areas. So you look around anywhere around the world, large cities, small cities of world-class status, they have very high quality public transit. And this is a very conscious strategy and policy to mitigate congestion effects and all the negative impacts of congestion. And obviously looking to the future, you know, with population growth and also with all the goals, economic, environmental, and social goals of cities, public transit is really quite indispensable for achieving those goals. So if we want to fight congestion, so what kind of public transit do we actually want? What kind of features do we want to have in public transit so that we can make it competitive and more attractive to people to use? So we obviously want public transit to be accessible both over space and over time. So we want public transit to be accessible all of the time, and also to be close enough to people's origins and destinations. You want it also to be affordable. Frequency is a very critical attribute of public transit. In many travel demand models, it shows that the higher the frequency is, the stronger really the attractiveness and potential of public transit to attract people. Also want it comfortable, so you want enough capacity. Obviously, competitive speeds with the car, as well as reliability, high reliability. Those are all attractive features that we all want to see in public transit, so that it can compete with the car and attract people and fight congestion. And obviously, safety and security is a big concern now. So we want this to be in public transit systems. So how do we deliver actually public transit services? It's not really the role of a single entity. It's a very complex decision-making process that has multiple horizons, temporal horizons. So the major infrastructure and modes of public transit are usually decided at the strategic planning level, which really has a time horizon up to 30 years. Tactical planning, a little bit shorter range planning, in which we configure the bus network structure and design and its size, as well as fleet size and fare policy and so on. Service planning and operational service and operational planning, which can span anywhere between 1 month and 1 year, in which we decide upon route structure, service frequency and timetables, vehicle scheduling and crew scheduling. And of course, you know, there's also the real transit, which is trying to ensure that public transit services are rolled out according to plans and schedules. So, so delivering effective and attractive public transit systems requires really that we engage in all those decision-making processes in an effective manner, and of course in an integrated manner. I just want to focus on improving public transit, surface public transit, and because our bus routes and our streetcar routes, our street transit in general, is really the workhorse of public transit systems anywhere, including our city here. Those services typically suffer from slow speeds and unreliable services. There are so many ways and strategies that we can implement to improve both speed and reliability and other service quality features of public transit. So there are the traditional route strategies that many of us are familiar with. For example, introducing boarding islands, curb extensions, so that we minimize really the friction between public transit and the general traffic. There's also the bus lanes, accelerated operations such as express operations, skip-stop operation, also stop relocation and consolidation, as well as queue jump lanes and TSP. TSP, transit signal priority, has been shown to be one of the most effective and cost-effective strategies to improve public transit. But technology can also play a role. There is in research and also in some pilots around the world, new ways of implementing TSP using connected technologies, in which really the objective is not only to minimize signal delays for public transit, but also to try to improve reliability simultaneously. So TSP that really works for both improving speed and reliability. Also, technology can be used to implement bus lanes in a more creative way, so-called dynamic bus lanes or adaptive bus lanes, in which buses would be communicating with the general traffic to clear the path ahead of it, let's say 150 to 200 meters, something similar to emergency vehicles. So this is something that can be enabled by emerging technologies, and some pilots have been already in place in other parts of the world. Also giving communication or communicating with the driver to travel at a particular speed or stop or streetcar stop for some additional time to improve both speed and reliability. Those are all systems that are becoming more and more available and have a lot of promise, as well as bus platooning as also a strategy that you could give preferential treatment to multiple buses all at the same time at traffic signals. So those are just some initial remarks and of ways to improve public transit such that we make it more competitive with the car, so we can attract people to public transit, and that way we can reduce congestion on the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Amer. And next up is Tim. Tim, if you'd please turn on your mic and camera. Tim is from Parsons. Hello. Hey there, I'm going to introduce you. Parsons is a provider of technology-driven solutions in many domains, including transportation systems. And our third panelist, Tim LaChapelle, is the Chief Digital Officer at Parsons X, its digital initiative. For over 20 years, Tim has led complex software projects. For the last 2 years, Tim has been helping to lead the digital transformation of Parsons, aviation, rail, transit, intelligent infrastructure, environment, and energy businesses. Today, Tim is going to share some lessons learned from Parsons' successful implementation of ITS technology. And I think Tim is joining us from his home in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Judy. Appreciate it. Yeah, I got really excited about trying to talk about a number of the different projects that we have. Really, when you hear about Chief Digital Officer, you're like, what the heck is that, right? You see no CTOs and whatever. And really, honestly, where I sit in the organization is really unique. I sit between the Chief Technology Officer, which looks at what are the big movers that we need from a technology standpoint, from a corporation to kind of engage with our customers with, and the CIO, who it's like, oh, that's where our servers and everything sit on the ground, right? To make sure that we are, where we need to be, so to speak, like with technology and enabling capabilities for our customers. Really, where I sit is in between the two of them, which I make technology real. That's my job in the organization, is how do we figure out how to take the best breed of technology, apply it to projects, and figure out what tools we can provide our customers. One thing that I can tell you, my last time in Toronto, it was actually a bucket list, a story for me. I've always wanted to go to the Hockey Hall of Fame. I've coached ice hockey for 15 years under USA Hockey. So I was extremely excited to get to Toronto. What wasn't so exciting was sitting in traffic downtown, which was quite extensive, even for 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which when Judy told me about talking about some of the problems, I cherry picked a couple of our ideas, maybe three of our projects, which I think really could help accentuate real world examples of how to engage technology, apply it to congestion, and see where it goes, right? Because a lot of our customers have a lot of different struggles, limited money, limited infrastructure. They know they need help from a congestion standpoint. And so how do you engage technology kind of on the cheap, so to speak? And how do you MacGyver a solution for an organization that really can answer the mail for what they want to do? So a little background on Parsons, excuse me. A little information on Parsons, just so if you don't know what Parsons is, we're a little over a $4 billion company. We have a 78-year-old history, and we're in dozens and dozens of countries around the world delivering technical solutions for our customers. You can see in there, it's been from the Middle East to the Ukraine to Canada to the US. We really thrive on difficult challenges that our customers present us and solving their transportation issues, right? So the three that I think are probably most apropos for our conversation, I'm going to talk a little bit about our ATMS solution, our intelligent smart metering and gating solution. So if you've ever been on the Golden Gate Bridge, you ever been to the toll plaza trying to get paid, it is about, I believe, 28 lanes wide. And if you think about that, that's a lot of traffic where it extends and comes back together. And so one of the things we were to do is we used a couple of AI techniques that we have embedded inside of our iNet product, and really it took like this kind of like paper and guesstimate kind of system, and we're able to train it with IoT data that was able to look at what the throughput is at certain lanes and then meter appropriately, basically allowing 15% more traffic through. Now think about that for a minute. 15% doesn't sound a lot alike, but think about when you talk about cars, trucks, you know, 1 in 5 are now able to get through a congested area, which weren't before. One in 6, excuse me. Think about that, like from a supply chain security perspective. Hey, I've got another delivery in that I didn't think about, right? And so when we looked at economic impact, the DOT did an economic impact of what the tolling system was. They came back to us with an economic impact of $50 million a year to the San Francisco economy that this solution directly impacted because of extra trucks being able to get through, being able to deliver goods more frequently than before, but the solution was in place. So again, not really changing the infrastructure, still the same number of gates, but on the back end of it, we provided a way to monitor and meter and stagger, kind of what Bahir was talking about. We're taking that kind of triangle approach where you're trying to maximize throughput with all this congestion, and we're able to do that dynamically through the day so that you're able to really show or really produce a viable economic impact that's measurable. The second project I want to talk about, and kind of going into a little what Amir was talking about intelligent use of transit, is a bus shoulder project we've done. So for a large US city, what we did was we were able to use in a highly congested area in the downtown of this major metropolitan area, we were able to then use the bus lane, the shoulder as a dedicated bus lane in high congestion areas. Why is that important? Well, in the area, it's one of, I think, the top 15 highest congested areas in the United States. And in that area, they couldn't build more infrastructure. It's a really enclosed area. There's only so many lanes. It's already abutted against a large urban sprawl, and there was no place to actually move the infrastructure, right? So what we did was we provided a series of integrated digital sensors with a traffic light metering system, along with communication gear with a bus and with the meters to make sure that people don't try and come on in when a bus is driving by at high speed. And we were able to get, what we were told was we reduced the overall global metropolitan travel time in that area by about 10%. Now think about that for a minute. That's just with buses on a shoulder, right? Again, 10% isn't a lot, but that means that 1 in 10 people or 1 in 10 trucks or 1 in 10 areas are now able to be in a highly congested area, giving you that 10% capacity lift just by using technology. And the third, and Bahir kind of reached and talked about it a little bit, is about congestion-based pricing. Each area is different. Each has different sustainability goals. Each has different environmental goals. Each has different net zero carbon emission, different environmental rules, right, around their programs, their projects, and how they want to manage their transportation infrastructure in these areas, right? So what you do is, you know, again, and Bahir did a great example of kind of showing how you model the pricing. But what ends up happening is that now you can actually use the congestion-based pricing to maybe fund additional maintenance projects, to help build capacity on the existing systems, right? To potentially use it to force folks, because of pricing, into other maybe higher lane, more high capacity lanes, whatever the Department of Transportation requirements are around congestion-based pricing. We used our INET system and kind of some of the models that we leverage, and we're able to find travel times, again, decrease on the metropolitan area, average times under the highway that was controlled by congestion-based pricing. And again, what it means for an economic impact value is that not only do they get more revenue for maintenance backlogs, but you also provide relief, faster travel times, goods are getting delivered, increased capacity without having to do an expensive, large-scale capital expenditure project. And these are just the three I wanted to touch on because I think they touch different areas where you leverage AI and smart metering. You leverage, leveraging existing infrastructure with a bus shoulder lane operation, or you can then or just doing congestion-based pricing or variable toll pricing. Right? These are all three things that you can leverage and that we've leveraged today successfully for our customers in building capacity without really engaging in a large capital expenditure project. And with that, Judy, I'd like to turn it back to you. Thank you for the time.
And thank you, Tim. Okay, I'm gonna get everybody to join by pinning them. How we bring people back. And me. I did it. Okay, so I guess I would sort of thank you all very much. And I guess what I would categorize most of this as is, getting the most we can out of existing capacity, because we've dedicated over the last century, I guess, a lot of space to rights of way, public, mostly in Canada, almost entirely public rights of way. In the United States, largely public rights of way. We have one toll road in our region, but mostly it's public rights of way, and we have a lot of it. And yet we're all just sitting in traffic. And so here are ways of getting more out of existing capacity. And yet we would say mostly in our region, and we're not doing it. Bahir mentioned the other day that in the 1970s, we've had ramp metering installed along the Queen Elizabeth Way, but now we don't really. We have like a little historical mention of it along there. So we went down this road however many years ago, but we're not now. What could we do in our region? And it sounds to me from what Tim says, how do we make the case for it? Tim talked about economic savings from the Golden Gate Bridge, from capacity improvements, moving more people around from the bus shoulder project, and using congestion pricing to fund maintenance and other priorities. So those all sound like very positive outcomes. What would we do here to make the case?
I think from my standpoint, I think it comes down to what is it that is important from your transit agency point of view? What meets their goals and objectives, right? Because if you don't have customer alignment on what the ending goal is, you're going to have a lot of struggle in incremental projects, because it's going to be a journey, right? You're never going. There's no silver bullet. There's no panacea. It's a combination of technology. It's a combination of different modes of transportation. It's a combination of integration. It's a combination of convenience. What is it that the transit agency wants to do from a strategic standpoint? And then lining up the projects associated with that, right? So, for example, if net zero is a really important thing, right? Let's say that's what's to be your primary goal, right? So what you then look at is, okay, then do we want to have congestion-based pricing that influences electric vehicle utilization versus natural gas versus, and it starts kind of getting these projects in place that help you then say, okay, well, this is what's important, and this is how I'm going to expand capacity, and then what can I put together to leverage technology to then build that capacity, right? Most cities don't have the ability to create a multi-story highway, do not have capacity to then expand the existing roadways that they are, because they're in historical constructed areas. I'll give you an example in Baltimore, excuse me. My Baltimore accent came in there. There's a highway to nowhere where they decided that they wanted to build an interstate between I-70 and I-95. Goes through a community. They are now, it literally has nobody on there. There's literally 10 people on that road in a given day, because there's no way to really easily egress in and out. It really doesn't go anywhere. There's no need for it. And so now they're spending over 10, I think the last price tag I had was around $50 to $60 million to tear that thing up, right? To regentrify, because the priority for the DOT is that our roadway needs to be usable. As a for instance, right? Our roadway needs to provide some kind of lasting, sustainable environmental impact, right? And so that's kind of what I'm saying, like aligning the primary need of the customer, right? Then leveraging the technology or coming up with ideas to leverage technology to meet those goals, and then having a series of projects to push that goal. Those are all going to be like, that's how I think you get the best buy-in from a customer perspective, at least in my mind. That's what we've seen successful in the past.
Bahir, you've been many years of working in this area in traffic management and then intelligent transportation systems. You've invented some things yourself. What are the downsides? Why is it so difficult to get this introduced?
Well, I think it's political decisions. Like, for example, when ramp metering, as you mentioned, 30 years ago or so, was introduced, people complained because the mindset is, it's a freeway. I'm supposed to get in, nobody stops me. How come you're putting a traffic light at the entrance? So they hated that, they complained, and they were taken down. Well, to that I would say, okay, if our perspective of traffic lights is that they are nuisance, imagine downtown Toronto, and let's turn off the traffic lights at 5 p.m. No one is going anywhere. It's going to be instant gridlock and no one is moving. So we want traffic lights to kind of introduce discipline in the system and get us home. So why aren't the highways the same thing? Like, we want them to break down and nobody's complaining about breakdown. And when we put traffic light at the entrances, people complain. So I think public education, I guess, and demonstration, showing things like in simulations and whatnot that I show, and show them that this little traffic light at the entrance of the on-ramp can reduce your time spent on the journey by half. Who wouldn't want that, right? So if we show them numbers and decent demonstrations, I think people will buy into it. And then look all over the world. They are all over the place in the United States, in Europe, and in Australia. For some reason, we don't have them in Canada. So hopefully we can reverse this by showing what the net effect is.
And so we do have a question in the chat about misconceptions among road users about, and so maybe if I turn to you now, Amer, and talk about, what are people's misconceptions about transit initiatives and why that might like deter us from doing things to improve transit, because we know we have to, it's a chicken and egg, better transit service, more people. What do we do to make it better? And what do we do to, make it better in technology? And how do we overcome people's misperceptions about what that is?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about public transit being, that it adds, for example, to congestion, and that because it's stops and go, it interferes with the general traffic, it causes further congestion, and so on and so forth. I think many of us are familiar with those comments. And again, as I would echo what Bahir mentioned, that there's also a lot of education that needs to be given to and delivered to the general public about really the benefits of public transit. In fact, really, when more and more people take public transit, they will in fact really free up road space, which will improve traffic flow for everybody else. So in fact, transit by itself is a congestion relief strategy. So I mean, there is a lot of education, I think, that needs to be given to generally to people to really communicate the benefits of public transit to and its role really society, not only for congestion but also for the sustainable environmental and social objectives of any city. Public transit can deliver really on those objectives.
And how, Bahir mentioned pilot projects. Tim has experience in having moved on beyond pilot projects. Tim, what is a pilot project in this? Are there opportunities for pilots, or do you just have to make the case and go full bore?
So typically pilot projects, what we've seen is works best is that there's typically grant programs available from a federal level, right? So I'll give you an example, right? in the US, there's the IIJA funding that came through, and a lot of the money isn't saying, hey, I'm going to build you this bridge, or hey, I'm going to build you this highway. It's not that. It's, hey, I've got these grant programs together with these objectives. What do you want to try? Right? Like, how do you want to inject technology in, right? So, you know, one of the key issues right now, for example, for Metro and bus is declining ridership, right? Because people work from home. They're used to kind of working from home. They don't want to come to the office, right? Now, sometimes they're being demanded to come back to the office, right? As paradigms shift, right? We've had people come to us and say, look, I would like to have a pilot, like I have a transit system, but you know what? If I put more Wi-Fi on it, or created an environment for better interconnectivity with people and their mobile devices, like I have an integrated app, or I have an integrated scheduler, or these are all kind of pilot ideas that actually help generate operational data on the backside that then we can optimize on. Kind of like going to what Amir said, right? Like there's all these different methods of transit, right? You know, a skip stop, a different bus platooning, right? Like all these interesting ways how to leverage technology and increase capacity, right? But everything kind of is like a, hey, I think it's good. Hey, I think it's, you know, it sounds like it'll work, right? And there is some, you know, this is when we get academia involved, and we get models in place and things like that. But like from a transit perspective, as a transit operator, you know, they're looking for ideas, and this is what these grants can provide you. I know with the Infrastructure Bank in Canada, I believe there's a couple other grant programs that you can then go in and say, hey, I've got this idea. Hey, I want to try this. Here's the objective I'm trying to hit. I'm trying to hit like an environmental objective. I'm trying to get a sustainability. I'm trying to increase capacity by leveraging technology. Or I don't want to, you know, I'm trying to, whatever it is, whatever that target is, right? A lot of people from the federal side are looking for those new and innovative ideas to then go cookie cutter across the rest of the country that kind of makes sense and have applicability. So really it's grant programs and the pilots that the grant programs can enable that really allow you, I think, to kind of experiment and really provide those, you know, ideas. And so that's where I think probably is going to be your best bang for your buck.
And sometimes you need somebody from somewhere else to tell you things that you should know. So, because in fact, our federal government, Infrastructure Canada, is investing in infrastructure, and some of it transportation infrastructure. And it said that every dollar that they spend has to do triple duty for the economy, for the environment, and to enhance equity. So, and Tim, you talked about goals. So I think we could maybe we talk about a little bit, you know, if that's the case to be made, Amr Bahir, how do these technologies help us achieve these goals for economy, sustainability, and equity? I'll tie that into a question the chat says, how do we encourage the public to believe these things?
I just wanted to add a little bit to what Tim has mentioned with respect to pilots and innovation, and actually remind ourselves, like when it comes to public transit, TTC and Toronto Transit in general has been actually viewed as a pioneer back in the 80s and 90s. For example, transit signal priority was first implemented, or in North America in general, was actually here in Toronto, was built in-house. Same with automated vehicle location system, same actually with integrated land use and transit planning. So Toronto has always been viewed as a pioneer. But at some point, we stopped really innovating, and we started looking around at others, you know, what they are doing, and we stopped really doing our own pilots here and our own innovation in our own backyard. So hopefully, we can really reverse this cycle and remind ourselves really again of, you know, what we're up to back in the 70s and 80s, and try to really redo this again now.
I second that very much, Judy. Like, you, believe it or not, Toronto was one of the first cities to put adaptive traffic signal control in the field some decades ago. Now that we haven't progressed beyond that, so the technology that was there decades ago either stopped or did not catch up with the rest of the world. In research, we show quantitatively what the benefits are. So it's not that, okay, it's going to hopefully be better. No, we show that 40% of your trip time will be shaved off. So we can very fairly precisely demonstrate to agencies how much benefits they can expect. Of course, if you go to the field and my 40% reduction in travel time from ramp metering turns out to be 35, well, I would take that, right? So there would be some hiccups when you implement anything in the real life, but we're not shooting blind. Like, there is established rigorous research that demonstrates the capabilities and limitations of each technology in numbers, and we have it. So hopefully we can share this with the public, with the decision makers to enable evidence-based decision making.
And I want to jump in here, Judy, real quick. That's what I'm talking about with academia. Like Bahir and Amir, they have all the data, right? And so it's translating that content to the decision makers with a lot of the, that have the control of the grants and making that compelling case. That's where I think the miss is with the pilots, right? That's how you get a successful pilot. Because the data is there, the technology is there. It's tried and true tech. I mean, there's enough information to kind of back up that, back up the claim, so to speak.
And and thank you for that, because these are stories that we know and we need to remember. That certainly it's as I was contemplating my future and what would be interesting to do, with my life, is that the TTC was such an exemplar for transit, and people were coming to see what it was, and it certainly, I'm sure, motivated a lot of people, in their interest in this field, right? So to remind us, as Bahir did the other day too, about the early days of traffic control with automated systems, right? Early days, early adopters, and as I said, and people are coming. Right now we're already award-winning in our congestion, and more people are coming. We're glad for it, but everybody's going to have to get around. So what are we going to do? Tim has had some great ideas for us. And how would we next persuade the public, who persuades the decision makers, go to other levels? What are the key things you would convey about what you've seen in your work about economic and social environmental benefits? What chords can we hit?
So I think
reduce travel times.
Yeah, I mean, everybody likes to go someplace faster, but then like we're talking about today, like capacity kind of then, once there's availability, capacity fills up again, right? So there's a lot of this like yin and yang, if you will, about traffic, right? And capacity. Once you build it, it gets used up. And so what I think in my mind is that you need to speak to people. Like, where are they today? If you've seen how ridership was in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 10s, and 20s now, it's definitely more centralized, more micro transportation, more mobile apps, more integrated into their lives, right? And providing that convenience, so to speak, is what I think that you can reach out where people are like, oh, I see get the faster travel time, anything else. But like, if I can now know that my bus is 2 minutes away and I was drink a coffee for 3 more minutes at the Starbucks, and I can be at the bus on time because now I know that the whole system's integrated, it provides me that flexibility and almost like custom experience, if you will, right? That we've seen an explosion in micro transportation grids, right? Where transit systems pick up smaller quantities of people to get them to the same geographic area, right? There's just a lot of things in there where I think people are the end customer, right? And if you think about any store, any large chain, right, it's all about customer service, right? And so from transit systems, thinking from a macro level to thinking more on a personal customer level, I think that'll go a little bit of a ways to acceptance and getting the change that you want, personally.
So it's about the client experience.
I have something to say here, that people choose based on what is best for them. Like, if I want to go downtown Toronto from Mississauga, for instance, I can drive and it's going to take me on a bad day an hour, or I can take transit and a good day, it takes me an hour, 15 minutes. So why is transit that slow? Go trains, if they become electrified, for instance, which is coming, but coming like not fast enough. It's coming in like 10, 20 years, who knows? But if it is much faster and the transit route becomes 45 minutes, then the choice is obvious. People will take public transit. And we have the right of way, we have the tracks. So just electrifying the trains and make them faster is a no-brainer, in my opinion. That is not coming fast enough.
Amber, what does it take so that Bahar is obviously, yes, going to exercise, do what's best for him, and as everybody should be making their choices for themselves, and they do. What do we do?
Yeah, I think we generate a lot of knowledge, and sometimes we don't really communicate this knowledge in a meaningful way to the general public and also to politicians and policymakers to make our case much stronger about really why it's important to expand public transit, why it's important to invest to improve its service, to make the trip that Bahar mentioned, hour and 15 minutes, to make it 45 minutes. I think we have we've conducted a lot of research. We have a lot of results, but sometimes those results only sit in papers that get published in journals, which is fine, but still at the same time we do not really communicate those effectively. So I think forums like this and some of the events that we try to do, and Mobility Network, to communicate those results to the technical community as well as the wider community at large, I think is becoming quite crucial. Really, at this point, we do not really have the luxury of just keeping those results to ourselves, and we need to communicate them and disseminate them in the best way possible to influence and inform the policy making and the decision making process.
So I agree with you. So COVID was a massive shock to all of us and globally, and we're still coming out of recovery. We're in recovery from it and not back to the way things always were. Some things are better. We decided to do these sessions by Zoom, save everybody a trip, let them join. Take an hour to join us. Thank you very much. But save the journey. We learned some things, that some things are better done just conveniently, and some things are better done face to face. But we've had a major disruption. Can we somehow harness some lessons learned out of that major disruption, like these sessions are on Zoom, to reimagine how people will travel and how that may unfold in the next few years?
I'm an avid proponent of telecommuting. It existed for long years, and people talked about it for decades, but it wasn't put to a harsh test as it did during COVID. And as you noted, Zoom saved the day. Well, not Zoom, but like telecommuting technologies saved the day. So most of our traffic management strategies, we say, okay, if we do this, and this, and reduce demand by 20%, that would go a long way. Well, telecommuting can do that. So if do I have to go to my office 5 times a week? If I go only 4 times a week or even 3 times a week, that's 40% of my commuting trips shaved off. Not everybody will be able to do that, but those who can reduce demand quite significantly to fit within the limited capacity that I talked about. So telecommuting is definitely one of the strategies that should be taken seriously and encouraged by everybody, the users, the decision makers, and everybody, to reduce demand significantly.
And I've heard it said, at least it's perhaps a pause that lets us take the steps we need as we prepare for growth, in our population, on our way to 9 million people in the region. Don't take it casually. Emma, what lessons did we learn?
Well, I think one important lesson we learned really was the social role of public transit, and those essential workers, as we call them, who really run the economy to a large extent, and they rely to a large extent on public transit. And so this was a very critical lesson, I think, to all of us, to reveal this or remind us again of that social role of public transit, and that it's not only about congestion, it's not only about the environment. All those are important, but also the social role of public transit is quite crucial. And now that COVID effects are slowly going away, still really we need to think very carefully about, the social equity issue and how public transit can play a very meaningful role towards this. So, for example, the recent service cuts, people have been showing that, those who will be mostly impacted by those were, again, people who are coming from marginalized communities. So, again, that was, I think, a very important lesson to all of us that we need to, carry through.
Things we knew or should have known.
Yeah.
And need to remember. Tim, what lessons learned?
So I was going to double down on what Amir said. I mean, look, you never really heard about transportation equity before COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now you do, right? And it is an important topic, right? I also think that what you found out was technology is an enabler, but maybe it's not the solution, right? Still need to talk to people, still need to have meetings, but there are better ways to maybe go about handling your day. Right. So from a transportation standpoint, do I need to take that trip in the office for 5 days a week, like Bahir was talking about, right? Do I need, what is the purpose behind a meeting? Like not just having a meeting for meeting's sake, right? Like COVID kind of taught you how to reorganize your work to be effective from a remote location, right? And like when we talk about, Lyft, Uber, all of these kind of, new and technology services that are available to you that kind of weren't really, they were there maybe in their nascent states right early on, but really how they've taken hold about getting me from A to B. How do I work better, right? I think that's what COVID taught you, right? And so by doing that, you then apply your transit profile over that, right? You then say, okay, hey, I want to be more green. I'm going to take a bike today, right? So I'm not going to put my car on the road, or maybe I'm going to move closer to work. Maybe instead I'm gonna not go to the office, but I know that my 3 coworkers live near me. We're gonna have a separate offsite here and not go to the office, right? And I'm still as connected as I need to be to the network of my company, right? So it's not just teleworking; it's remote working, remote processing. I think that it just allows you to kind of reassess what's important to get business done, and then use the right tools, transit, remote working, whatever it is, to kind of make that happen.
So I think that's where we are, right? We have a bit of a new reality. We can use some of us can work remotely to reduce the demand on our system. People are coming. We're going to need these technology solutions to help us get more of the infrastructure we have. As Tim pointed out, we're not building more roads in built up areas. That's not really a get out of jail free card here. So then for us, I guess the challenge is, and we're up for it, I think. Let's take the great knowledge we have and encourage people to, our decision makers and the people who will be affected by it, that there are solutions that can be a bit better for everybody. So I'm going to thank you all very much for your comments, the panel. Thank you very much. And thank everybody for coming. This is it. This is the 6th and the last of our sessions in the Way Forward 2023, but we'll be back next year with another series of talks on great topics of interest and importance in transportation planning. Yes, all sessions are recorded and will be shared. And that's it for the Way Forward, but it's not it for us this month. In the next several weeks, we have 2, if you want more about ITS and transit, then please join us for the Transit Analytics Lab talk in June, and transformative transportation in early July. You can find out more about these on Mobility Network's website. You could register there too. Registration is free. Both events are online, but we do ask that you register so that you can send you the connection information. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you very much for your comments and for taking the time to be here. Thank you to all of you for joining us in this talk, and as many as you were able to join us for. Please check back to the website for other events that we have. You can find out about events by subscribing to our newsletter, which you can do on the website. You can find the events under events. You can watch news of things that have happened. And please join us again. Meanwhile, take care